singularities, language is here synonymous with culture. A culture is a set of representations of what have to do to create or to obey all the subjects who depend on this culture. True democracy, prophetic democracy, says to us, all cultures are equal in dignity. We have to respect the equality of cultures as a norm for all social life, for all good social life. This principle is the principle of tolerance and understanding of the other cultures. So, first, principle of human rights, and second, principle of tolerance in the field of different cultures. And third, every subject has the right to be free. Freedom is the greatest extension which is possible for the expressive power of the individual. Freedom is not an abstract law. Freedom is really the possibility for an individual to have the power of maximal expressive capacity. So, democracy is freedom for everybody. And finally, we can summarize the great democratic conception with three principles. First, principle of human rights. Second, principle of tolerance. And third, principle, imperative of freedom for everybody. My philosophical problem is that I disagree with this very nice, very beautiful vision of what is a real democracy. And I have to explain this disagreement. I begin with two formal points. First, there is a complex relation, a complex logical relation between the two principles of true democracy, principle of human rights and principle of tolerance. Because every principle is a limitation of the complete legitimacy of the other. You have to respect individual desires and wills, to respect the conditions of individual happiness, to respect individual human beings. That is the principle of human rights. But naturally, if the contents of desires, of wills, is absolutely hostile to some language, to some culture, we cannot accept their consequences. Individual happiness, okay, but not in reactionary racism, sadism, misogyny, infamous practices, murder, and so on. So, you have to give a definition of what is a normal desire, a natural will, a correct happiness. And this definition is not immanent to the principle of human rights as such. Symmetrically, you have to respect all different cultures. It's the principle of tolerance. But if the prescriptions of some cultures are absolutely in contradiction with the norm of freedom or with the norm of individual happiness, we cannot tolerate them. other cultures, okay, but only if they obey to our understanding of democracy and human rights. Respect of the other cultures, okay, but not at the price of slavery, torture, despotism, humiliation of women, obscurantism, and so on. So, you have to give a definition of a normal culture, a correct collective language, a comprehensive delimitation in a culture of what is good and what is bad. And this definition is not immanent to the principle of tolerance. My second remark is that finally, in true democracy, freedom is identical to good life or to happiness. In any case, the question is the relation between human beings and social conditions and cultures. The goal of true democracy is to obtain a sort of harmony between the creative action of an individual and the prescriptive terms of a culture. But you have to suppose that this harmony is possible. And in fact, it's a new supposition concerning human nature, which is something like that. It exists a culture which is precisely the culture based on individual desires and wills. For example, the fundamental democratic culture of the Western world in general and the United States in particular. In this culture, we can hope that freedom goes with happiness or good life, that creative individuals are in harmony with the diversity of cultures. But we have to remember the fact that exist some cultures which are by no means culture of this type. Often, freedom is not at all in happiness or creative individuality. In some culture, freedom is in obedience and sacrifice. And it's the real contents of something like a contemporary war. As you know, it exists today a war against terror. It's a sentence of Bush, in fact. But why? What is finally the war against terror? At a philosophical level, this war is in fact a war between enjoyment and sacrifice, between comfort and money, and on the other side, death, obedience and sacrifice. And we have to conclude that neither in one case nor the other there is real universalism. On the two sides of this war, we have something which is not in the ethical and political conception, something we can agree with. So, we have to modify the principles of true democracy. we have to examine the true democracy or the prophetic democracy inside critical remarks concerning its formal contradictions. First, I don't agree with the expressive definition of freedom. It's probably the more complex and subtle point. I think that freedom is not the expressive potency